Hello again. We're still on part one of the module on who is man, and we're comparing him to animals. The Bible always makes man distinct from the animals. Just set my watch again so I don't run on forever. The Bible always sets man distinct from animals and says man is significantly different from animals. And when we ask the question, well, what's different about man? The first thing we will think of is generally man is more intelligent. And the second thing we'll think of is that man is able to use tools. He's creative. And yet it's a different type of intelligence, we're saying, not just more intelligent, but a completely different way of interpreting intelligence that man uses than animals. Secondly, the creativity of man is completely a different scale and a different idea than the way animals do. Animals are looking for a comfortable system and a way to suit themselves. But man is looking for extensions and ways beyond and far more in his universe. So man, in those two ways that even evolutionists would recognize, is significantly different from other species. But man is biblically distinctive from animals in many more ways. We talked a bit about morality the last time, and so we were saying that, let me find it here, that man makes conscious moral decisions. His conscience says this is right or this is wrong, and animals don't have that kind of thought process, and certainly not the idea to break their own moral code. That is very much man's thing. We're going to carry on from there this week and look at some of the other evidence that man is not an animal. The next thing I've listed here is beauty. And that is not that man is more beautiful. Women are definitely more beautiful than men, but that's my own opinion. But our experience of beauty and our appreciation for beauty is different than animals. Animals experience beauty in their mates. So you'll see different birds displaying, doing different, the peacock's display for his woman, and the spread of different species relies on them finding each other attractive. You have the bright pink bottoms of certain monkeys, and they wave them around to tell their mate they're excited. These sorts of ideas, there is an attraction in mating, but we find beauty in the most bizarre things, not just in a mate, but in the most amazing things in our world and universe. I don't know that we often see monkeys staring off into space at the thoughts of the universe and the stars and beyond, and yet we look at the sky and all that's beyond it and think it's amazing. We go to the beach and we worship the sun. We lie in front of it and enjoy that heat and find beauty in the heat of the sun. Now, other animals enjoy the heat of the sun as well, but man then turns the sun into a god in many religions. We have this much greater idea of appreciation for beauty and what's beyond. Animals will experience joy and excitement and will like something and find the world attractive. But we see beauty in the obscure and in awkward and in the most amazing things. We look at mountains and think of grandeur. If you don't think a mountain is grand or amazing, it's an unnatural thing for human beings. We do experience beauty and grandeur when you hear the roar of waves or see a beautiful waterfall or the rainbows. I am sure that there are animals that see rainbows all the time and never stop and look up and go, wow, look at the amazing thing there. And we try and work out why it's there and how it's come about, and the way the light's hitting the different droplets, and we're getting this curvature based on the curvature of the earth and the atmosphere, and all these understandings of where it's coming from, the angle the light's hitting and the water, and we look at them and see so much more. We find beauty in the most amazing things. We think cars are beautiful. Things that we've made are beautiful. I'm sure that birds appreciate the nest that they've built. They don't stand back and go, wow, do you know, I think I'll paint that this color. And I think we'll do this and we'll do that. There are particular birds that adorn their nests, but it's not the same as us finding beauty in everything and all the world around us. And constantly looking for more beauty as well. We see beauty in the non-human, the creation-based things. We see it in stuff. We think, you know, that particular toys or particular objects or particular paintings are exciting. Sculptures. People have made these things, and yet we find beauty in them. And I think we're supposed to. I think it's design, that we're designed differently from animals to see more and to appreciate more. And part of that is meant to reflect our response to a beautiful God who creates beautiful things. We're meant to get excited about that beauty and appreciate that and glorify him for it. So maybe you'll think about some of those evidences and some of the things that you see that you recognize as beautiful. And as you stop and think about that, think how many animals would sit and look at that same thing that you're looking at and go, wow, isn't that spectacular? Yes, we see beauty in a mate. Yes, we see beauty in things that make our lives comfortable. But yes, we also see beauty in things far beyond that. You think that's unique to man? Have a think about it and see what your world experiences, what the evidence that you've come across. Some of the other differences that we make are very non-evolutionary, and it's worth talking about that. It's not that there's no evidence of evolution. There's evidence of microevolution, things changing on small scales, developing porcupines, developing extra long spines, butterflies changing color, things developing and adapting to their environment. There is evidence of evolution on small scales, and it's an amazing God who can create creations that will change. And it's the same even with human beings. If you put me, pasty white boy, in the desert, and I have children, which is unlikely at this moment in time, but my children will be darker than I would be, and their children, if they were brought up in the same desert environment, would be darker than them, because our skin would adapt, the melanin in our skin would increase, and I would gradually adapt to that environment as well. I would get darker. And we adapt, and our creative species, we change. And so there's evidence of some evolution in creation. And I'm inspired to believe in a God that can create things that evolve and change and adapt to their environment. But I think that man is not evolved from other species, that God made us distinct. I think there are very distinct species of animals that could not have evolved from one another. But I also think that man is clearly distinct. So some of the things that are non-evolutionary are the evidences of love and altruism and evil and malice. Alistair's just arrived home. Love is one of the things that man does that other creation does not, that animals do not. And by that I mean man has the ability, altruism's the idea of doing something good just for the sake of it being good at a cost to yourself. The idea that man would pay a cost that has no benefit is unlike animals, and it's anti-evolutionary. It does not meet the goals of evolution. The goal of evolution is to maintain your species, to increase it, to pass on your DNA. And love does the opposite sometimes. Love lays down its life for someone else. Love does these great things for the good of someone else. And that idea is non-evolutionary. Animals don't do that kind of thing. The love that man shows is unique. Now, I know that not all men show it, and we don't all show it very well, and in many cases at all. But that idea is there, and it's real, and it's evidenced by men. that would give up their rights and their wants and their needs for the good of others. The other side of that is equally non-evolutionary. Man makes some really evil decisions, some malicious decisions. The genocide of man against man is unbelievably disgusting. And it certainly does not provide development of the species. Man drives other men into the sea. Man ruins the lives of other men. And that's not just an idea of the survival of the fittest, it's just malice. There are other creatures that are territorial, that fight over their territory, might even kill over their territory. But the genocide of man is nothing like, of man on man, is nothing like any other creation. Animals don't do that. And it's non-evolutionary. It doesn't develop the species. It doesn't lead to advancement. So both love on one hand and evil on the other hand are evidences that man is non-evolutionary. They're very clearly connected to the moral decision making as well. If man makes decisions morally, then he will make a decision based on good for others, or his own desire over the good of others. And he will be making those decisions based on morality and choice and freedom. And that love and that evil are evidences that we do not process the way animals do. We do not think or work the way animals do, because we are capable of two ends of the spectrum of choice that animals don't go near. Animals obey habit, repeat process, pass on their DNA, right? They mate and they produce offspring. Men make these huge decisions, both for good of others and against the good of others, that are totally beyond the decision-making processes of animals. I'm just going to pause for a moment. So man's ability to make choices far beyond the scale of understanding of animals is a significant difference. And the evil and malice that man uses is huge. You look at the way animals treat each other. There is no thought, even the animals that eat other animals, there's no anger or malice or evil intent in it. And yet with mankind, that is very much the case. So I want you to think about some of those thoughts and then see if you have, in your experience, any love or any evil that you go back to that you think there is a clear difference there between the way we think and the way we treat each other and the way animals do. And the next one goes on to what the Bible says at the start in Genesis 1 about God saying to the animals, go and fill the earth and subdue it. Go and take power over creation, over the animals and over the trees and over the land, and subdue it, own it. And man has this great desire for subjugation of other things, to have power over it. And man, unlike any other species, fills the earth. There are many species that there are more of than mankind. There are many insects where there's hundreds of billions of them and millions of billions of them and more of those species than there ever will be human beings. But they don't spread out and fill the earth the way we do. They don't take over. They don't have this constant desire to increase their territory. There are territorial animals that protect their territory. They don't go out to increase it the way man does. And man fights over territory and over their space and their power and the things they control. And that desire for control and for ownership and for power is unique to man. It's also an evidence that man's decision-making process is different from animals, because that desire for it, that purpose-driven, power-seeking evidence of man rubbing off on man and hating each other It comes from that desire to have more, to own more, to be more in control. Man's desire for control is very different from the animals. Look at the animals. We say the lion's the king of the jungle. In what ways does he show it? What ways does he take control? Does he just look comfortable in his environment? Because there were many animals like the dodo who was very comfortable in his environment, but had no control over it when other species came in. And man is the species that goes in, takes over, pushes other things out, controls them, decides where they should go, leads herds of them around, or takes flocks of them, and is lord over them. That idea is very different from animals. The way we make decisions includes much more reasoning and choice. We don't make decisions like animals do instinctively on what is going on and the environment, and those we appreciate. Very simple choices, even if they're intelligent creatures, very often making the simple correct choice. We make choices that are bad choices. We make choices that are crazy choices. We make choices to try things. We make choices to go and come back, to forward things. We say there's a time for everything. It comes from the Bible. We try different things. And our reasoning system is so much more complex. It's a different style of doing things. Creatures don't really make those moral decisions. I have decided it's better to be single than to be married to the wrong person. Now, I know that might sound a sensible decision, but it's certainly a non-evolutionary decision. Evolution says pass on your genetics no matter what. My decision says, well, actually, my life will be better off not with somebody who's nagging and controlling and difficult and annoy me. And likewise, if I'm causing them an issue, it would be better if that was not the case. So reasoning and choice that we make comes down to not just what we think is a good idea morally, but what our experiences have seen, where we come from, what we think is a good plan, how we consider it might work out. We're making all these different conceptual reasonings to help us make our choice. We reason in so many different ways. This study of reasoning is a massive part of social sciences, and it's a huge subject. Just the amount of reasoning that we do and the things that we do distinctively in reasoning that are completely different from animals. Those ideas, those significant differences between us and the rest of the world are down to just our reasoning process, and the rest of creation doesn't have it. Let's continue. I'm going to try and press on because I've got very little time and I want to keep on top of this. Some of the other differences between human beings and animals are these. The emotions that we have. Now, animals have emotions, but not the range of emotions or the way they deal with them. Particularly guilt is unique in the way that we feel guilt about things that are wrong, or even in our own experience might be wrong, or that we think others might consider a problem. We have this amazing subjective memory where we make decisions based on what we remember or what we imagine or what we think people might imagine based on our memories. And we look at the world from our own point of view and our own experiences and our own emotions and our own feelings about things, and we let that control and guide our decision making. That is unbelievably different from animals. They're so much simpler in the processing of information and the decision-making systems. We can make decisions, like I said, that are crazy. We can make decisions that we know are wrong. We can make decisions that are attempting things way above our ability. And we can make all these crazy decisions because we can think and feel and experience things differently, and we can process that, and out of that, go for something and be filled with all these regrets and choices and experiences and feelings about it. That's very unique. And man is special because of that. Two other things that possibly are more contentious. One, the Bible is very clear that man is given a different soul from the animals. That it says specifically that God breathed life into man, and that man has eternity in his heart. But I think it is clear that there is a spiritual awareness in man. Every civilization since the beginning of time, since the beginning of human history, which, as I've said before, goes back to 3,500, 4,000 BC, every single one of them has a deity of some kind, understanding of spiritual beings out there. Even many atheists will believe in the spiritual world, in the healing powers of crystals, or the spiritual mediums and the answers from tarot cards, whatever it might be. There's always some evidence that man is looking for the beyond, the spiritual experience, the non-physical and the non-factual thing in the world and in the universe beyond. That we believe in God. Atheism was on the increase in the 20th century, but in the 21st century, it's been on the decrease. Actually, people are starting to realize this world is not without God or without meaning or without purpose or without hope. There must be something more here. And a spiritual awareness. Islam is continuing to grow, but Christianity is constantly growing as a religion as well. That people are aware of spiritual things, they're aware of God in the universe, and internally aware of spirituality, internally aware of a desire that's bigger than just passing on my DNA, existing and doing the best, being the most comfortable and most enjoyable that I can be. Being the best me I can be is not actually all that we are. There's an awareness that there's more. And that spiritual awareness is unique in mankind. The evidence is that we look for God and worship things that are out there, even if it's worshipping footballers and film stars and sex. But somehow we're aware of a bigger reality and a desire for more and something significant that says there's a spirituality in us. And the last thing I'm not saying these are the only things that make us distinctive, but one of the other ones is that there's so much uniqueness in each human being. I'm not saying other animals don't have differences in their species, but every human being is so unique. It's not just a matter of fingerprints and irises and all sorts of, just physical features. Tone of voice, processing thoughts, intelligence and emotionalness, the way we react to the world, the decision making. One of the reasons I like Duncan, if you know Duncan that comes to the church, is whatever my thinking process is, his will be different. We are so unique and so different, and it's an element of this amazing design of human beings, that we're designed to be unique, we're designed to be special, and we're all looking for our significant part, our purpose, our being, the reason for me among all of my species. Not just trying to create more of the species, but trying to be me in the species, trying to be my own version of what we are, trying to be what God would want me to be. All of that is a constant desire of man. We are completely different one from another, not just male and female, but every single male and every single female is different. And that uniqueness among 8 billion people in the world, plus all those that have gone before us, is stunning, is absolutely majestic, and is totally different from other creation. Animals do not search for the uniqueness, live for the uniqueness. They might be different one from each other, but they're not celebrating and living out that uniqueness. And yet we go for looking for more ways to be unique. And suddenly we're questioning our gender, our sexuality, our spirituality, our religions, we want to be our uniqueness. We want to be so unique that we're different from everybody else. We don't just want to be more skilled and more intelligent. We want to be more something, more different, more popular, more, I don't know. That uniqueness is special. And it makes each and every individual human being have their own significance. Some of the other decision making is an issue. We're going to come to the issues now and basically ask the question, what is the issue with men considering each other an animal? Where would your issues come with that? I'll pause for a second, or maybe you should pause the video and have a wee second to think about that. Why is it bad to think of each other just as animals? You and me, baby, ain't nothing but mammals. So let's do it like they do on the Discovery Channel. So are you familiar with the song? Hopefully not, because it was terrible. But the idea was that we're all just animals. Why not just do what they do? Let's just have sex the way they have sex. And yeah, actually, mankind is the most sexually driven, most uniquely inspired by sex of all the animals. So why you would want to do it boring ways like animals do, I have no idea. But the idea of men considering each other animals is comes from those who think we're merely evolutionary developments from other animals, going back to essentially sludge in the beginning. And the issue with that is, the issues I find with that, first of all, particularly, is that we start to devalue one another and ourselves. If I am essentially no different from the sludge, then I am essentially no more valuable than the sludge. And those who think that animals are special and therefore don't want us to value humans more than animals are not understanding what I'm saying here. Because if I'm valuing man more than animals, I'm valuing animals more than sludge. And that's important too. I'm saying animals are significant because they were created and God created them beautiful, and God gave man dominion over them, not to ruin them, but to work with them and to enjoy them and to enjoy the world with them in it. But man's devaluation of man as merely an animal goes on to say, if that animal came from sludge, man's value is merely the same as sludge. And the devaluing of man is a huge issue in our world. This is where we still have problems with slavery. There are more slaves in our world today than there have ever been. We have abolished slavery, and yet that is not the case. This world is full of slaves, and it's not okay. But people can do that because they can own somebody, because they devalue them. If man is just an animal, then I will use other animals for my will. And we start to devalue man and the animals and everything else to be merely sludge, merely a product of an explosion that produced random things. And so your value is basically a random event. The issue particularly is that you devalue yourself. If you devalue yourself, you're saying that you are less. And then when your life is tough, you think it's not worth anything. Well, God says it is. He made you specifically. He made man individual, separately from all the animals and separately from each other. And you are significant and important. God says, I made you. You didn't just happen. You weren't just the product of your parents being very excited. You are specifically made by me. I am a bit like my dad, a bit like my mom in some ways. Not enough. She's brilliant. But I am a bit like them, but I am not them. I am me. And I'm significant and I'm valuable because God made me with a soul and a spirit, with moral decisions, with choices that I can make either to love or to do evil. If I act just like an animal, and if I treat myself like an animal, I miss all of that. And it's worse if I treat you like that. I look down on you. That's where so many problems in history have come from. You look at what Hitler was basically saying with the Third Reich. He says, we're going to start a new empire, and those Jews, they are less. They are not enough. The blonde, tall, handsome men, they are the next evolution in the process. We are just an evolved species, and they're the next level. And they devalue others, and they make other people small. That is not okay. So the issue with being considered animals is that we treat each other as valueless. And what it does is it makes abuse acceptable. If we are just animals, then who am I to say that your decisions are wrong? Now, I am aware that some people really want to protect the freedom of their decisions. For example, if one person says to another that it's wrong to be gay, you're gay, that's wrong. The response is, I'm free, I can make my own choices. I'm not going to get into the morality of that debate. But if we don't have a morality, if there is no moral level, then you can't say it's wrong. Which in that case, you might think is okay. Okay, I can't say it's wrong for somebody to be gay. But what about somebody who's a pedophile? What about somebody who's a rapist and a murderer? Why do we put them in prison? Why do we say that's not okay? Why do we just say to them, your behavior is unacceptable? Because it's abuse. Where do we get the word abuse from? It's abuse of somebody's rights. Where do we get their rights from? Well, it's the rights of every human being. Why do human beings have those rights? Because they're not animals. Because they're significantly different. Because they should be protected. Because we're designed for the good of one another. And morality gets lost. And people get abused. And abuse becomes acceptable. And that's all okay. That's just the way it is. When children are used as pawns in a game between a husband and a wife who are separated and fighting, that's okay. It's not. When people are treated as slaves because, well, I'm richer than you, so I can own you, that's not okay. And the ability for abuse to become normal and acceptable comes from the idea that we're just animals. If you think of other things, or if you want to come back to me on anything, get in touch by email, pastoralanwright@hotmail.co.uk. I'm not trying to make anybody feel small. I'm not trying to make your decisions less important. I'm trying to say that you are significant. Your individuality is significant. You are important because you're not just an animal. You are specifically designed by God. If you accept that you're specifically designed by God, then it allows you to realize so much more about your worlds, the environment that you're in, and who you are as a significant part of all of creation. If you choose to ignore God and say, I'm just an animal, then you can treat each other like animals. But that's what you'll find you feel like. You feel insignificant. You feel like just a lost being. Man is significantly different. And I want us to appreciate that, because when we start to discuss what man is like and the stages of man, I want us to be able to start with, well, this is a unique process that God's designed for man. And it's important that we can say, well, if God has meant something, it's because he thinks we're significant and special. What is man that you're mindful of him, God? You made him a little lower than angels and crowned him with glory and honor. You give him dominion over all the earth. God says you're significant. The Bible says you're significant. And that we're not just an animal.